But everything doesn't have to be taught through words. A lot of life skills actually, and especially where money is concerned, is actually imbibed through actions. In my own experience, I can tell you that you can buy the most expensive toys, but children will find the cheapest thing and they'll play with that the most. And I think one of the things that parents can do is take children shopping, right? And get them to see price tags. But I think it's always nice to have some casual money conversations on the dining table. So when she knew that she had only X amount and she has to buy a lot of things, then she knows where she compromises and where she doesn't. Most of these insurance plans come with very high costs, and hence the returns on these really don't beat inflation. If you decide to go abroad, for example, the cost could be anywhere between 65 lakhs to 2 crores for
right
a
now.
4-year course. Yes, right now.
When it comes to bringing up kids the right way, everyone has a theory. Depending on who you ask, among the top traits to inculcate, there's cognitive ability, becoming good at a sport, picking up a musical instrument, or some other creative ability. There's also life skills, swimming, and learning how to drive. And don't forget culinary activities. Or at least they need to know how to make chai. But very rarely will someone say that they need to be taught how to manage money. And I don't mean pocket money. That has limited benefits. In a world where instant gratification is front and center, and there are services that can get your kid a pizza in half an hour, I'm talking about teaching kids about how to budget. Luckily, this is changing very quickly. There's more recognition of the need to educate young children about how to earn, spend, and invest so that they can truly get a head start on life. That's what we're talking about on Big Decisions this week on NDTV Profit. My name is Alex Matthew, and my guest today is Mrin Agarwal, founder of Finsafe and mom of 2. Thanks so much, Mrin, for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, Alex.
One of the reasons why I wanted you to join me on this conversation is because of your unique experience of having brought up 2 lovely girls who are now teenagers, as I understand
That's
it.
right.
So you've learned a lot along that journey, along with what you do on a daily basis.
Yes.
How young is too young to start that money conversation?
So I think, when children are toddlers, it's a good time to start. And I know you're
That
very
young?
surprised. Yes. And I know you're very surprised with my answer. But, everything doesn't have to be taught through words. A lot of life skills actually, and especially where money is concerned, is actually imbibed through actions, right? And it is the actions that the children are going to see and learn from over, really telling them or teaching them about it, right? Now, why did I say toddler? Because a lot of young children, so let's say slightly older, when they start going to school, for example, they think money comes from the ATM.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why it's really important that, we start early on. There are things like introducing them to a piggy bank so that they get attuned to the habit of saving something and get attuned to the habit of knowing that, there's a place where you can actually save something, right? So I would say as young as toddlers, or when they're at least starting school, is a good age to start.
When they start school, okay. So I guess because you're giving your kid, sometimes you don't have the ability to stay with them when they're at that first standard time, when they're going to the canteen, for example, to pick up a bag of chips or to pick up something healthier, maybe. We didn't have the option back then, right? But now you do. Having said that, if you start that young, how do you start? Because you can't start with a heavy conversation about money, Mrin.
Yeah, you can't. So as I said, you start with introducing the piggy bank so that they learn about the fact that you can save money somewhere. And then it's really about saying no, Alex, because these days I see that parents are really giving into all the demands of the children, whether they're small or they're big demands. And, in my own experience, I can tell you that you can buy the most expensive toys, but, children will find the cheapest thing and they'll play with that the most,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of these are very transitionary, right? Like you buy something and they play with it for 1 or 2 days. But, beyond that, we are also seeing that, the attention span is going down and down down and down because, they have everything. So I think a very good way to then inculcate financial habits is also by posturing and saying no. And why did I say posturing? Because it's really not about how rich you are or how much money you have or whether you can really afford this. It's about posturing so that the child knows that they can't get everything that they want.
So give me an example of posturing, something that you've experienced yourself.
So let's say you're out in the mall and the child wants ice cream or, some expensive toy. You could just say no. You don't need it.
It's as simple as that?
Yes, it's as simple as you saying no. Of course, it's always the moms who are going to be the villain of the piece, not the fathers. So I will say that, yes, this is also mom's responsibility.
But you need, and so therefore the mom needs to be able to bully the dad as well.
Yeah, well, the dad has to fall in place.
Okay, all right. So the dad better fall in place. But there needs to be a very clear no. Sometimes it's just easy to fold, if you can call it that. And okay, the other aspect is I was having a conversation with somebody I know, and they have multiple kids, 3 kids. And what they were saying is that when they go to the mall, invariably they spend a lot of money because you get something for one and you have to get it for the other 2 because they're upset, right? Otherwise, how do you manage that?
So it is difficult, Alex. All of these are very situational. And I would always say, okay, this time it's this person's turn and your turn will come some other time. Or maybe you remind them that, I bought you this recently.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm buying this. It's a kind of sad that you have to keep justifying this. But yes, I mean, that's so that there's no resentment at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I think, it's a fine balance. And again, it's really, that's what I'm saying. It's really posturing and the balance that you can bring about.
So I would think that you need to be able to convey that you have to earn something. Yeah, I think that that's always necessary. But then at least when I was growing up, I had to work towards getting something, right? Pocket money was given, but I had to wash the car, for example.
Yeah.
Right? During the summer holidays, there was plenty of time, not
Yeah.
talking about getting up in the morning before school and washing the car, but
Yeah.
there was an idea that was at least attempted to be conveyed, which is, okay, I'm giving you money,
Yeah.
I'm giving you 200 rupees, but you need to wash the car for the rest of the month.
Yeah.
At that time, it was 200 bucks, but then
Yeah.
that's, but is that something that is always something that you try to cultivate?
Yes and no, I would say. And the other thing, Alex, that I would like to point out, while yes, to an extent, what you're saying is true even now, but the other thing is also about showing the importance of your work. Many times kids feel that that you're earning well, and what's the problem in spending. And the children are actually not realizing the sort of sacrifices the parents make so that the kids can have a good life and the importance of it. So I think as children head to middle school, it's very important that we also talk to them about the importance of our work and the fact that the efforts that we are doing so that kids can have a good life, so that at the end of the day they value what they're getting. So
Okay.
today people really don't want to make their children work. So then this is a way for them to then get them to value that money.
So, okay, so we've fast forwarded a little bit beyond, and so I guess the simple answer to the first question is how do you deal with your young kids is to be able to say no and to try and teach that delayed gratification, right? But at the age when kids start understanding about where money comes from, they're not imagining that it comes through the ATM. There is a communication that you're earning either through a business or through salary, and there's income involved, and you're working for something. Then you need to move the conversation forward as well, I would think, right? Is there an ability at that point, Mrin, to say you need to start budgeting and to give them a certain amount of money to say that you need to manage your week or say your month with this much?
So what I would say is that, again, when kids are in this 6 to 8 standard, not too many parents want to give pocket money at that point. And I think one of the things that parents can do is take children shopping, right? And get them to see price tags. Right. And the other thing is really tell them this is the limit up to which you are going to spend. So while you're not giving them money and asking them to budget, but these are ways that you're teaching them budgeting by saying, look at the price tag and automatically, have a cutoff saying I'll only spend this much, let's say if I'm going to go and buy clothes, for example. Right. And this is a good way to then get children to basically learn about budgeting, right? The other thing is, of course, you have to just keep saying no all the time,
But
right?
but the price tag that you pointed out is so important, because we're talking about an age where brands are so important
Yeah.
in the psyche of a young person, because they're going to a school maybe, or they're in a group of people or young people that have access to the latest brands,
And
the
they're on
hottest
social
brands, and
media, right?
they're looking at
Yeah.
what's cool, and that's not necessarily in everybody's price point.
Yeah.
How do you deal with a situation like that, where I know that ultimately the point is to say no, but is there a better way to communicate that?
Well, I think parents just need to be open to say that maybe we can't afford it, or just say that this is too expensive and not really worth it. I think it's best to be outright and very clear about these things.
Okay. Okay. So we're talking about peer pressure essentially, and you're saying that the best way is to communicate. Is it possible to be a little, to go too far on the other end of the spectrum though? Because I know of a lot of kids that are very sensitive to these things.
Yeah.
And so it becomes difficult to manage those issues, and is it important to stress on certain other aspects, to stress on their abilities, to stress on their own intelligence, and to say that this is what should give you confidence more than anything else?
Maybe. I know these are difficult situations to handle, but I think just being outright plain and truthful and direct about it is what actually works. And if the child is too sensitive, then they possibly just need to spend more time to make them understand the reasons for their decision.
Okay, fair point. Is there a case for involving your young children, and here I'm still talking about the 12 to 15 age group, in certain investment decisions that you are making for them? Because I know that a lot of people, and this goes way back to when kids are born, right? People go ahead and buy things like insurance policies for their children, not necessarily the best thing, but there are investments that are made, PPFs that are created, mutual funds that are bought. Of course, you would wait for a little while before you involve your kid, but when do you start involving your kid?
So I think it's good to make them aware that you're making some investments for them, so that they understand the meaning of the term investment. And also, the age that you talked about is the age when also kids have to start thinking about what they want to do on their higher studies, right? So when the child is 15, they're in ninth standard possibly. So this is the time when I think it's very important to make them aware about money matters. But of course, you don't have to tell them where are you investing or anything of that sort. But I think it's always nice to have some casual money conversations on the dining table, right? And again, I just want to reiterate that this whole journey up to a point when, let's say, the child is in school, it's really about imbibing, like getting them to imbibe things. So hence it's really about how can you get this into your dinner table conversation. So it could be as simple as saying, okay, for the college fund, I just invested in this mutual fund, or this scheme has come out and I was thinking of putting in money in this for the child's
But
college.
would you say that it can be earlier? Because you learn about simple compound interest very early in school, but it's so theoretical. At least it was when I was going
Yeah.
to school. And I'm guessing that
It
you
still
experience
is,
it's still
yeah.
the same. So therefore, as a mom that is also involved in educating people about finance, would you say then that the onus is on you to take them through a real life explanation of how compound interest works? And ultimately, that's the base of all investments, right?
Yeah, you could do that. And a nice way to do it is because it's there as part of the maths curriculum, right? So they always have word sums on it. And, if they're working on it, you could always just bring in a real life example to make them understand.
Okay. So we've spoken about several aspects with regard to the children and dealing with children, but there's also the aspect of how do you deal with decisions that affect them, with regard to the money decisions that you're making. And that is the second half of the conversation that I want to have, Mrin. So ultimately, what we're trying to do in the second half of this conversation is to talk about how you should set aside a certain amount of money early on for your children's education. It may not necessarily pan out that they would need that entire amount, but the importance of doing that. And there are several other things that we need to get through as well. We'll be back after this very quick break. Welcome back. We're on big decisions and we're talking about when you should decide to have money conversations with your children. And we've covered quite a few age groups and we've discussed very important aspects of this. But at what point do you almost completely let go and say that your children should make their own financial decisions? I think that's an important decision to make. Is there an age group that you have in mind?
I think when they are going to college, right? Because they're 18. They're adults. If they can take care of all other decisions, they can also start making financial decisions. So, Alex, when my daughter went to college, we gave a budget saying they had to buy a lot of things. So we gave a budget saying this is the amount, make a list of everything and go and buy it, right? Now, this is really nice because what happens is it teaches them problem solving, right? So when she knew that she had only X amount, and she has to buy a lot of things, then she knows where she compromises and where she doesn't. So for example, she could go in for an e-book, but she wouldn't compromise on the earpods, for example, right? So it teaches them to make the right choices, what they feel is right. Not all of them are going to be right. And, we ourselves have made so many mistakes in our lives. We can't expect them not to make mistakes. So it's fine. But I think, and also when they go to college, of course, they're all having the monthly pocket money to spend. Again, leave it up to them. Just be very firm that there's no unlimited spending, because this is another big issue right now where parents say, oh, my child is going through so much difficulty in college, the food is terrible and blah, 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 and allow unlimited spending. Don't do that. Again, if you want your child to be financially responsible and if you really want them to have this life skill of managing during difficult times, you just need to be very clear that you're going to say, okay, this is your budget. You have to live within this budget, and actually give them some reward, like saying that if you're able to save 10% of this, then over a period of time,
will match that.
I'll match that, and you can buy something that you've been wanting to buy, right? So I think this works very well in then getting them to try to do something, right? Otherwise, it's like everything is coming very easy.
And making mistakes is important?
Of course, it is.
So, and that's coming from somebody who's made several, right?
Of course.
But you don't have to say it like that. But okay, all right. Let's talk about decisions that parents are making with regard to investments. And we briefly talked about that. Parents tend to buy life insurance policies for their 2-year-olds. Is that something you should really do?
Oh, not at all. Because, most of these insurance plans come with very high costs, and hence the returns on these really don't beat inflation. And but the fact is that people are not aware of it, and most of these policies are quite missold. You have agents who are coming and telling you that you will get 18%. We regularly get queries all the time on this, with people reaching out to us saying that I've been told I'll get 18%, 20%, 30% on this, right? So there's a lot of mis-selling. Honestly, I would say that please remember that the inflation on education in India today is between 7 to 12% per annum, depending upon what sort of a course you're getting into. Also, you must remember that the absolute amount that you need is increasing.
Yeah.
And if you decide to go abroad, for example, the cost could be anywhere between 65 lakhs to 2 crores for
right
a
now.
4-year course. Yes, right now. So 65 lakhs to 65 lakhs to 2 crores for a 4-year course. That's a lot of money that you really need to save for.
So these are landmarks essentially that you identify. Education is one major landmark, and you're talking about wedding, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to help your kid
Yeah.
out. Is there any other major those are the two landmarks?
Yes.
And so therefore you create funds for each of these?
Yes, I mean, I would say focus on the education part
Of course.
first. And again, given that you have to beat this, let's say, average 10% inflation on education, the only way that you can really do it is by investing into equities.
Right.
So certainly if the child is young, let's say you have still 10 years to go for the child's higher education, 7 to 10 years, you should look at investing into equity funds. And again, if you don't know which fund to buy, a simple Nifty 50 index fund itself will do. But stay away from all of these insurance policies and the fixed return schemes. While they give you tax-free returns, the point is that they're not going to help you beat the inflation.
Yeah, which is
right?
10%.
Yes, which is 10%.
And the bonus is that if your kid decides to not go and study abroad and you don't need to use all of that money, you can set it aside for something else, right?
Absolutely.
And so, okay, so and then there's a wedding expense that you set aside. A lot of people do set aside a large amount of money. What tends to also happen, Mrin, and this is quite common, I've seen this across the board, is that people tend to borrow from their own resources to pay for their kids. The thinking, of course, is and look, this is an Indian concept, is that I take care of my kid now, my kid is going to take care of me down the line. Is that wrong, though?
I don't think that today's generation thinks like this. Like today's generation who has kids in 20s, I'm saying, wants to live with their children. So here's what it is. You do that and then you're dependent on your kids, or you be selfish and try to figure out a balance, and then you're living life on your own terms. So I think it's really a question of, how do you want to have your future life, right? Where you may not necessarily be earning to pan out. So do you want it on your terms, or do you want to be dependent on someone? And yes, it is very common that people do dip into the employee provident fund to fund for the marriage expenses. And again, weddings are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's a lot of peer pressure on weddings as well, both for the parents and for the kids. And this is where children have to be really strong about it. I have seen cases where the kids have said that we would rather spend the extra money on having a good life, right? Or, building experiences for ourselves.
Or having a great honeymoon.
Yes, absolutely. Rather than just focusing on that one day and having, everything done in a very designer or upscale way. But at the end of the day, you pay a lot for it. So I think it's really dependent on the child to say that I'm going to have a wedding within this budget, and ensure that, you're also doing this for your parents who've done so much for you lifelong, right? So somewhere you need to not get swayed by all the trends that you're seeing around you on the weddings.
Okay, so that's pretty much covering a large part of what we have to speak about. The last aspect that I want to talk about is, what if you don't have enough for what your kid has aspired to do, education-wise, right? I know that the concept in several other places is it's simple. Either you get a scholarship or you take a loan, and usually it's the kid taking a loan. We in India think very differently, right? It's usually us as parents or our parents taking the loan on our behalf or helping us with money. What is the ideal situation?
Well, it is a difficult situation. And what I would like to say is that you don't really have an option but to take the loan. But I think it's very important.
The education loan for the kid.
The education loan for the kid. I think it's very important to make the child aware that you have taken the loan, and be very clear that once the child starts working, then the child also needs to look at repaying the loan along with the parent, or at least contributing to a part of the repayment of the loan. And more I'm seeing that, again, the sacrifices of the parents, like in terms of taking a loan and servicing the loan, are not being valued, because everything is coming so easily. Like even it's easy to get an education loan also, right, these days. So somewhere again, I would again like to say that, the posturing that you do is very important. It's not that, you're trying to tell somebody that I've done a favor to you or something like that.
Yeah.
It is just to inculcate, the value for that thing.
Yeah, that's a fair point. There's a distinction. Nobody's saying that somebody's going to shirk their responsibility.
Yes.
But you're ensuring that what you're doing is understood.
Yes.
right? And that is the bottom line. Mrin, thanks so much for joining me on this conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Alex.
Well, I hope that this conversation helped you at least get thinking about this very important aspect of communicating the importance of managing money to your children. Or maybe you can have a conversation with somebody who has kids so that you can help them in some way. It's been an absolute pleasure bringing you this conversation. Do stay tuned. There's lots more coming up over the course of the day. And this is NDTV Profit.